welcome to the GrapeSEED Official Podcast. We are bringing you another new series starting with this episode. If you have listened to recent podcasts, you will have heard Cindy Ota and all the great thoughts and experiences she has shared. Since the well of her knowledge is never ending, I wanted her to have her own space so we can all continue learning. And when it is story time in GrapeSEED, we all have to go to the corner. Welcome to Cindy's Corner, everyone. Cindy will be sharing with us things that she has lately found informative and inspirational in her work as a GrapeSEED coach, two of the main goals for the content of what I try to bring you every week. So welcome to your show, Cindy.
Thank you, Adam. That was a fantastic intro for me.
Well, I've set the bar of expectations very high for you now.
Yes, you did.
What do you have for us today on your very first episode?
Okay. Right when you talked to me about this, I was thinking about elements that are most important for teachers because recently during one of our talks, manager talk for GrapeSEED, we were discussing different elements of so-called requirements we want from teachers or schools want from teachers they wish to hire, right? Along with some other elements, one topic that often came up is that a teacher should be a native speaker. I have been thinking about this a lot ever since, and today I would like to talk a little about my thoughts on this issue. This is not the GrapeSEED official answer or anything, but my personal thoughts on what makes a teacher great. One of the uniqueness of being a coach here in Japan is that, as you well know, Adam, we work with a very diverse group of teachers, right? I think I've personally worked with teachers from over 20 countries or nationalities, and obviously, not all of them are native English speakers. They speak differently. They all make their gestures differently and they react differently to situations. But it is also notable because they bring their culture with all of that into the classroom. And I recently heard on Jennifer Jenkins' podcast, I think it was called English as a Lingua Franca. And she mentioned how more than 70% of English users are non-native speakers. And I think we can all agree that English is a, lingua franca, obviously, and it is the most common language or mode of communication that enables people to understand one another, regardless of their cultural and ethnic backgrounds. And for schools to focus on quote unquote native speaker and make that like one of the most important criteria seems almost outdated or maybe even unfit. So a non-native speaker may think you need to develop a near-native speaker accent, whatever accent that is, to have good pronunciation or be a real deal, to be taken seriously here or as a GrapeSEED teacher, but that should never be the case. And it simply isn't true. I think an accent just represents who you are, where you come from, and sometimes even your culture, right? So there's this comedian I love called Trevor Noah. He said some time ago about accents in one of his stand-up comedies. He said, accent is not a measurement of intelligence. An accent is somebody speaking your language with the rules of theirs. So in that sense, being a non-native English speaker shouldn't or should never be an issue. I mean, I'm not promoting grammatical errors, and we would for sure love, like the non-native GrapeSEED teachers, to teach the phonograms or the sounds of each alphabet a certain way to avoid confusion for students. But all the great teachers share the same type of qualities, and I feel being a native speaker isn't even an issue.
I would definitely agree with you. I've had that same experience going around to a lot of different schools and talking with the managers or the principals there and asking what they're looking for in teachers. And sometimes their priority is, okay, we need to hire a native speaker.
Yes.
And to them, that's a person who is a native speaker is automatically a better teacher than somebody who isn't a native speaker. And you've already said this basically in what you've said already, and I would agree with you. And that's not necessarily the case. There's been a lot of times where I've seen non-native speakers teach much better than native speakers. There are just different strengths and weaknesses. So if you are a non-native speaker, maybe you don't use 100% perfect sentences or pronunciation all the time. But for example, both of our main experiences here in Japan, if you have a Japanese teacher teaching English to Japanese kids, that Japanese teacher has also had to go through the process of learning English.
Yes.
They will know where the pitfalls, where the difficulties that their students will have are. They can anticipate those better because they went through that themselves. Whereas a native speaker, automatically you have good grammar, hopefully, and good pronunciation. But a lot of times when a question comes up, why is something the way it is? Or how can you help a student understand the language besides just repeatedly telling them the correct form over and over again? Sometimes the native speaker doesn't have that same level of understanding and self-reflection to be able to support their students to get to that level.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, obviously, I'm not saying here that non-native, like native speakers, as you said, are not as good as non-native. That's not the case here either. And kind of going back to what you mentioned, Adam, I've also seen teachers that been living in Japan, like native speakers, or really anyone that's been living in Japan for some time, and then they try to acquire Japanese, they also understand the frustration. So that also helps too. So I totally agree with that one. When you've yourself acquired the second language, you kind of know the frustration, the timing when you lose confidence, all those, all those elements that's involved in acquiring a language, they kind of understand and they can support students in that way.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.